Hello, everyone. Great to have you join us, and welcome to our February Jazzit with Java. It's our first one for 2022. I am Lori, your host today, and it is my pleasure to welcome our presenter, Mike. Today we are presenting an Ask Me Anything, where we will be answering your questions that you have previously submitted to us. Thank you to everyone who took the time to send in questions for today. We will not be providing a PDF of presentation, so don't look for one. There isn't one there. We have a lot of questions to cover, so we may not have time to answer questions at the end of the presentation. Everyone's audio is muted today. If you have problems with the audio through your computer, please phone in using the phone number and access code listed in your GoToWebinar console or on our screen. You can close the webcam dialog box if you find it too much of a distraction. We'll be posting a video of today's webinar within the next week, and after that you will receive an email with a link to the video along with a link to your attendance certificate for PD. We recommend that you load your certificate in Google Chrome, as it may not load properly in other browsers. So let's get started and answer some of those questions. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Lori. Welcome to 2022. Wow. So we thought we'd do something a little different today. Rather than us choosing the topics, we asked for questions to come in. We've had a lot of great questions, and we're going to get to those right now. Okay, Lori, let's start.
All right. The first question is, how do I add my letterhead and electronic signature to the PACT letters?
Thank you for that question. So we've had a lot of people adding PACT on, and they already have their electronic signature and letterhead in Jazzit fundamentals. So the quickest way to add those components to the PACT letters is to simply copy your Jazzit financial statements into the PACT master, okay? So I've done that here. I used File, Copy Components, and I brought the financial statements into the PACT master. Now, if I open those financial statements, they should be properly connected to the KLID, okay, so wherever that is. And if I click on Engagement, I see the names here. Now, that's important if you have electronic signatures, because these are the names that are going to be available in the PACT letter, and we're going to be putting in the password depending on, which signatory we've chosen. I'm choosing Mr. Brown here, okay? So I know my financial statement is connected properly, and what I'm going to do now is just go back to the master and click on the first letter here. So let's go into a bookkeeping letter. Okay, so actually what I'll do is, why don't we pick a different one here? I'm going to go down this one. Okay, so this letter right now, if we look at it, has no letterhead. It has nothing going on in terms of the signature block. The signature is just all the manual options here, okay? So what I'm going to do is update this letter so that it has our letterhead and it has support for electronic signature. Now, there's two ways we could do that. One is we could click on the Reload from Resource Center, which updates the body of the letter as well as the letterhead and the signature block. If I'm in a client file and I want to update only the letterhead and the signature block, click on Document Settings, and you'll see there's an option right here, Update Headers and Footers, okay? So I'll do that in this case. The letter does not get disturbed, only the headers and footers and signature block get updated. So now I have my letterhead at the top. Whatever footers I may want are down at the bottom. So in this case, I have my address, and on each page I have my logo down there. And in the signature area now, the name that I had chosen in the statement, Mr. Brown, now appears here, okay? So if I turn on the signature, put in Mr. Brown's password, then the signature is now in the letter, okay? So I could PDF the letter, and what I would recommend you do after you PDF the letter is just turn that signature off. It actually deletes the image from the document, so even in design mode, we wouldn't have the signature there, okay? So the beauty of putting it in to the letter in the master, so putting that letterhead and support for electronic signature in the master PACT is when you copy that letter now from the PACT master into your client file, you already have your letterhead there. And as long as you have a financial statement in that client properly connected to the resource center, we can also bring in those electronic signatures. All right, there we go. One down, Lori.
Second question was from Sharon. What is in the HF module? How does that relate to the engagement report signature block and letterhead? And how does that relate to the statement footers?
That's a great question. So in here, what I'm going to do is I'm just looking at my financial statements in an example file, and I'm going to set this engagement. I've got it set to a compilation. So I have my compilation report here. I can pull in that note for a basis of accounting. Down here, we get questions, people saying, well, you know, I find that when I'm working with Jazzit and I'm in the statements on the report, that I have to manually set things in this area. I don't like what you've chosen here. Maybe I want something like this. Maybe I want something like this. Not that we're a CPA public firm, but I'm just saying, for example. So I find myself having to do this in every file. Is there a better way to do this? Or maybe I want to reorganize some of this other stuff, okay? Well, this signature block is in a separate module in your resource center. It's in your HF module, the financial statements, headers, and footers. What I recommend you do is this. Get these drop downs exactly the way you like them, okay, with the preferences that you want. Then go into your CalIB. So I'm the administrator. So I'm going into our resource center. I'm going to open up this module here. So notice that under financial statements, we're opening up the first one here, HF headers and footers, okay? Know that this module does not get updated from a normal update to Jazzit fundamentals. So whatever we do in here is not going to be overridden by any future update. So if we want to change headers, footers, letterhead, signature block, we can do all of that and it will not get overwritten on a future update. Okay, so what I'm going to do is there's a button right here. I'm going to just go right down to the report signature. I'm going to go into a design mode. So we're using the administrator password to do that. Administrators, you should know that password. And in the financial statements, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'll put myself where I need to be. I'm just going to go actually just into enable edit mode. Okay, you may or may not have locked that depending on your firm. I'm going to copy that firm name, which is set to the preference that I want. I'm going to go into that HF module. Okay, so we see firm name here. I'm going to replace that. Now, what that actually did is it set it to the one that I want, the second option. I'll do the same thing with this lower one here. So this cell here is set to the preference that I want. And then I'm going to go in here and set that same cell to that preference. So what I'm doing is I'm just replacing those cells, okay? So it's saying there's a difference because this cell is actually in two places, and I want to set it to my preference. So I'm going to use the clipboard preference there. So now I've got those set the way I like them, okay? I'm going to unlock the form mode and just double click up here to tell everybody that, hey, I made a change here. This is a good way for us to know that we're actually connected to the one we just changed. We'll see that in a moment. But before I leave here, what else is here, okay? So if I look at my handy document map here, header 5 is the letterhead. So if I needed to modify letterhead for the report, it's there. And if I look around here, there's the header for subsequent pages. You know, if I want logos on a particular page or anything, I can modify anything in here, save it, and then update the statements. This will not get overwritten by any future update, okay? So we made our changes, we're happy with that. I'm gonna go back into the statements. So let me go here, and I'm just gonna go back out into form mode, where we normally wanna be, okay? Click on admin. So if we're updating the signature block on the report, then we're going to be clicking on the engagement report, okay? It's part of the report. So if I want to update that area, I would be clicking on here. The report itself would be updated and the signature block would also be updated. And down below, we see we are connected to that module properly. That's why I did the date change, so I know I am on that one. If we had updated our letterhead or any footers to other pages, we would be clicking on here to pull that in, okay? So if we go back to our report then, notice that these are now set to my preferences, okay? Remember when we started, those were blank. So that's an easy thing to do. We can just modify it in the HF module and pull that guy in, all right? Next question, Lori.
That's great, Mike. So Sharon also asked about the linked versus manual notes and which options are available in the linked notes that you may not find in the manual notes.
Thank you for that question. Okay, so down below here, I want to show you the long-term debt note. So if I just click on our map here, I've got a long-term debt note, and then actually this isn't the default note. I might come out of here just to reset this. Let's do that, one sec. The notes that we put in here by default are actually the notes that are connected to our working papers. We think, hey, our working papers are so wonderful, why would you not use them? Well, you may have a good reason not to use them, and that's fine. But we want to make sure that we use the note that's appropriate for the situation, okay? Now, I think I actually did save this, so I'm going to take this note out of here, okay? So notes that are linked to working paper, there's a different note which is not linked to the working paper. And depending on whether I'm using the note or not, or working paper or not, I need to think about that. So under the long-term debt, notice that there's one that's linked to the trial balance, not using your working paper, and there's one that is linked to the long-term debt working paper. So let's just compare those quickly. So if I pull in this note, this one is linked to the working paper, which means that the description of the loan is going to come in automatically. The lender, the rate, the maturity date, the collateral, the balances, they're all coming in from that working paper. But if I'm not using the working paper, then that's not going to come in. So what I'm going to do is take that note out, and I'm going to instead replace it with the note that's linked to the trial balance, okay? So let me pull that note in. All right, so linked to the trial balance, not using the working paper. So this one is manual. So that means we type in the details of the loan. Now, if we can connect to the database, great, in CaseWare. And if we can't, we can insert a manual line and just type our balances in, okay? Now that means that notes like long-term debt, marketable securities, what other notes, Lori?
Loans and notes receivable.
Loans and notes receivable, lease obligations, those notes are all connected if there's a working paper. Property, plant, equipment is a little different. Notice that this one has a drop down to actually connect on. So it's the same note, we just make it either manual or we can make it connect onto the groups. Okay, so there's another little tip for you if you're using our property, plant, equipment working paper. If you want to use the information right out of that working paper, you can do that by just choosing the link on to the working paper itself. Now, up at the top here, I'm going to turn off the marketable securities. Notice that this note does have an option to link on to cost or fair market value. So if we have put the fair market value information into that particular document, so right in here, then we can connect to that, but you do need to fill this out. This is all based on cost, more for tax purposes, and this is more for accounting purposes. So really, depending on what we've chosen here, we're going to connect to either the cost or the fair market value, okay? If I turn this note off and go up into the balance sheet, you'll notice that it shows cost here because we're on fair market value by accounting, all right, in our CaseWare trial balance. If I right click on marketable securities, I want you to see that there are options here for that description. So I can show cost. I probably wouldn't show market value because that's what's actually on the balance sheet. I can say no disclosure, or I can edit this to say whatever I want, okay? So keep that in mind. What you need to do is just right click on marketable securities and you'll see these options coming up. Okay.
All right.
Next question.
Nelson asked, do you have support for VeriGuide for PBAs?
Okay, we do have a compilation report for PBA. So under engagement, if your designation is set to either public business accountant or professional business accountant, depending on where you are in Canada, and you choose compilation, we have an update coming out which will give you the compilation report based on the VeriGuide, okay? If you need this sooner, you can email support@jazzit.com. We'll send you an update for your home menu, your statement menu or your title page or table of contents, and the report, okay? We do not have an engagement letter specific to a VeriGuide. As far as we know right now, we don't have no one's provided us a sample. If we get a sample of the VeriGuide engagement letter, depending on how different it is, we may or may not add that. In the current engagement letter though, keep in mind that Appendix A, once you have that VeriGuide version of the compilation report, you can update from the statements by clicking on this button. So we'll pull that report and as the appendix on your engagement letter, so at least you'll have that much going on, okay? Next
All right.
question.
Ian asked about the balance sheet descriptions versus the signature line descriptions. Where does that information come from?
Okay, that's a good question. Here's what we're talking about. So in the financial statements, up at the top, when we choose a structure, okay, so I'm under the client profile. Is it a limited company? Is it a partnership, a proprietorship, not-for-profit? You notice that public sector is grayed out only because I don't have the 9 column statements loaded. But if I choose limited company, the title over here is shareholder. If I choose partnership, partner, proprietorship, owner, and not-for-profit, member, okay? If I don't like those options, I can change it, either selecting something off the menu or typing in something else, okay? Now, what I'm gonna do is actually type something else in here so we can see where this gets used. And I'm gonna type in here, Big Kahuna. Okay, just, you would never do that, but you get the idea of what's going on here. So what's happening is on our balance sheet, we have liabilities and Big Kahuna's equity. We have due to from Big Kahuna, okay? So it's coming in here. And on the report, we have to the Big Kahunas, plural because we have a multiple here. Notice there's a drop down on salutation of the report. So if we're going to directors, board of directors, you know, there's different options if you don't like the default. Okay, so normally a compilation, we might direct that to a shareholder, you know, on a limited company, so I wouldn't have to change any of that. Now, the other question that comes up is the signature lines on the balance sheet. So if we go down to the balance sheet at the bottom, notice it says on behalf of the board, and it says director, okay? So that is in a different location on the home menu. When we click here on signature lines, first of all, what do we want for a title at the top? Notice custom. You want to type in something else? Go ahead, okay? And notice these fields here, okay? So if I type my name in here and I type in Lori there, okay, then what's happening is the names are changing in the signature line at the bottom of the balance sheet. So it's not controlled by that other option where we said the description of the owners, okay? All right, now we got all kinds of goofy stuff going on in there. Next question, Lori.
All right, and Sumi asks, tell me more about how your electronic signatures work.
So this is an option that you can add to Jazzit if you don't already have it, where we have the firm name on the engagement report and various partner names on the letters. Those signatures and password, the images and the passwords are saved in a locked module in your resource center. So we would provide you with that module. Now in the financial statements, and you know, this is a little different from say DocuSign, okay? So in your financial statements, when you have your draft stamp on, there is no option to sign the report, okay? So you won't see the button to insert the signature. So first of all, it has to be set to final. Then you will see the option to turn on the signature, okay? So when I turn that on and I put in the password, you specify what that password would be, okay? So I'll put in my password. It brings the signature in. Now it's saying here for your own security, we recommend that you print or PDF this document and then turn that signature off. When you roll the file forward, the signature will also be in the off position, okay? But by turning it off, we actually delete the image of that signature from this particular page, okay? So it actually is an image, much like what you would do is if you printed it and actually signed it by hand. It looks very nice, and it's tied to the draft stamp. When you roll forward as well, your draft stamp typically is set to turn on, which means your signature on that document will automatically turn off. Now, for the signatures on letters, keep in mind that when you click on engagement, you choose a partner. So I'm going to choose, in this case, Mr. Brown, okay? So if I go into a letter, that's going to be the default person on the letter. So if you've got partners doing particular engagements, just set it to the one you want it normally to be in here. Each partner then would have their own password. So we type in the password for Mr. Brown. his signature would come in here. We could then PDF or print the document, and then when we turn the signature off, it deletes the signature from the document. Now, if you want a different person to sign that letter, just click the drop down and choose that partner. Okay, click on the signature, type in the password for that particular partner, and you'll get that person's signature. See, my camera here is frozen. I have this weird expression here. Let me just reset that.
You always have a weird expression.
That's true. Different? I do. I don't know if it was frozen on the other side, but I was looking at myself there going, so I just put it back on again. Okay, so we could choose a different partner. Now, in some firms, not every partner has an electronic signature. For example, I added myself in here. I don't actually have a signature, so I wouldn't be able to turn that on. There's no image for me on there, but there is for the other partners, so we should be fine, okay? All right, hopefully that answers that question. And if you're interested in that, just send an email to sales@jazzit.com if you don't already have that, and we can help you out with that. Okay?
All right. And Jeffrey asks, how does information in the firm profile get updated in a client or master file?
Great question. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the CalIB, and we're going to open up the firm profile. So in CalIB, there's a module right here called the firm profile. I'm going to open that up. And what I'd like to do is add another partner on, which would be available in my letters, etc. So I've already got myself in here. I'm just going to add Lori in. So I'm going to put in Lori. And what are you? You're a CPA, CGA, that CGA thing. And info@jazzit.com. Okay, whoops. You know what? I forgot to unlock it. So I got to unlock it with the administrator password. Did all that good typing. Lori McGurran. All right, CPA, CGA. Well, eventually we'll just be CPA, I think. Info@jazzit.com. Okay, so let's save that. Now, how does that get into the client file? Well, in the example file, if I open my financial statements and I click on admin, that's actually all you have to do. As soon as you click on admin, it pulls in whatever's in the firm profile in that linked resource center and saves it behind the scenes in the financial statement. So when we save this financial statement, all the letters or bank confirmations or any other document that needs something from the firm profile will be able to access that information. Now I'll save this and I'll just confirm that. So what I'm going to do is open up the engagement letter, and if I click the drop down, you can now see that Lori's name is available here somewhere. There it is. Okay, so we can update the firm profile. Now, if your address changes or if your firm name changes, you do need to contact us. We can help you update those fields and just send you your firm profile back. It's not a problem. We want to make sure that our records are current as well. So we just get you to tell us there's a change and we can help you and just send that module back to you. It's not a problem. Okay. Where are we at, Lori?
All right. Yep, there we go. So this question is from Steve. How does the staff information in a checklist document control get used in the checklist? For example, in the PACT PT key, the PEG PC key, or the PC key A.
It's a real mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. It is.
So I'm just going to go back to the master here. Let me see if I have that open. I don't think, yeah, right there. Okay. Now this is interesting. Remember we copied the financial statements in earlier, right? So right now in a document like this letter, if I look at this letter right now, the drop down here actually shows the partners which were available in the RD module because the financial statement is connected to your CalIB. And if I open up a particular checklist like this completion checklist, when I click on, notice there's no drop down here. When I click on this, what it's doing is it's putting in my initials from CaseWare's identity, okay? So if we go back to CaseWare side for just a second, if I click on tools and go into change identity, it's pulling it from right there, okay? There is no drop down and that's all that it's using. Now, if we have a situation where there is no financial statement, now I actually need to make sure I close this guy. Let me just close it. Let's close that, okay? Let's pretend there's no financial statement in this file And the way I'll do that very quickly is do what we always say never do. I'm going to change the identifier. So the identifier is always FS. If it's not, you get problems. Now, what I'm going to do is open the PACT control, and you see this staff area here, okay? So I put myself and Lori in it. I put our initials in there. How does this work now? There is no financial statement, which means in the signature block, we're not pulling from, you know, the firm profile in CalIB. So now let's look at the letter again. So let's go back to that bookkeeping letter and look in the drop down. So look at that. Now you see the names that were typed into PT key, okay? And if we go into a checklist like that completion checklist, okay, wherever that was, right there, notice there is now a drop down on the initials, okay? So I can still double click, puts our initial in, but if I click on the drop down, you'll see the initials that were in the PT key, okay? So this product's document control will control the names that are in the signature block and the names in the initials drop down if there's no financial statement. If there's a financial statement, the names in the signature block are going to be based on what's going on in the statements under engagement. You know, that's the default. And in the initials column, you just double click and you're going to be putting the initials in that you have in your CaseWare identity. Okay. All right. What's next?
All right. Darlene asked, how do I know if my PEG checklists have been updated?
Okay, so generally CPA puts an update to the PEG checklist once a year. When we have that update available, we send an email out to administrators to tell them that there has been an update to your PEG checklist. The other thing to keep in mind here is that in any particular document, now I'm in PACT, but the PEG is similar, in the footer, there is a date here and indicating when CPA last updated this particular document, okay? So if you're not sure and you have a subscription to our PEG checklist, just log into our Jazzit support, click on the download page, and you can download the checklist. You can download the full product if you want, the master and the resource center, and just replace the ones that are there, and you will be on the most current version. Watch for our emails, you know, when these things get updated. For example, in the PACT product, we have 2 documents which we're going to release in early March, perhaps right at the beginning. One is to the T1 checklist. So it's going to be the T1 checklist for 2021. And we're going to be releasing a T1 organizer, okay, for again, the 2021 year end. So you will get an email when those are available and you will be able to download those from our website, okay? So the other thing I want to mention here just before we get out of that, and I don't know if let's see. So in my example file, if I'm connected to the resource center, in this case, CalIB, notice that at the top it says connected to the CalIB, last updated on. So we're kind of outing the administrator. So if you see an ancient date here, that's important. That means your administrator has not gone and updated the resource center from our website, okay? So they may need to do that. And you know, even though I see everything under admin looks up to date, if this date up here is very old, we need to update it. And if you're dealing with 4200, you want to be on a, you know, a newer build. The last one was in January of this year, okay? To make sure your report, your letters, you know, et cetera, the note, everything is as current as it can be. All right, so check that date up in here. And if there is no date, you're either not connected to the resource center or they've never updated from the website. That's possible. We get that once in a while. Okay.
Now, I think you just answered question 10 as well.
Wow, I'm on a roll. So the resource, so for the financial statements, you can open up the Jazzit update and there is a date at the top when the person downloads, but we just saw it's even in the financial statement as well. Okay. All right, rock and roll.
Okay, Curtis asked, why do my statements still show the notice to reader report reference?
Okay, so there's 2 parts to this question. One is why, when I did all my updating, do I still see notice to reader, not the compilation engagement report? Well, part of that is the year end in your CaseWare file. So remember that 4200 comes into effect for year ends on or after December 14th, 2021. So if you've got a November year end and you've done all your updates, it's still going to say notice to reader, and that's fine because it's prior to December 14th. Now, if you want to, under report options, you can set it to 4,200, but you'll be early adopting, which you're allowed to do, okay? Notice that this first option is bolded. This first option, which is the default, is based on the year end found in the CaseWare file. So if the year end is on or after December 14th, 2021, we're going to see the 4,200 report, okay? So when we have that report, if you don't already have the basis of accounting note in, which I brought in, let me take that out of here. So I'll just quickly pull that, okay? So if it doesn't see that note, you're going to get a notice saying you need to pull that note in, okay? Notice that's not the basis of presentation note. That one's for reviews and audits. This is the basis of accounting note, okay? Now, when I do a print preview, I want you to see that at the tops of each page, there is no unaudited, see notice to reader, whatever, okay? So the model financial statements from CPA, when we're on 4,200, does not have a report alert there. So we do not show a report alert there. Now, if for some reason you want to put something there, just click on your report options and type something into this field here. That will appear as the whatever you like. If you want to say unaudited, you could put it there, but the model statements do not have that in there. Now, if you've done everything and updated and you still see unaudited see notice to reader, it means you need to update your balance sheet. I had one the other day from 2013. They hadn't updated in however many years. Is that 8 years ago now, Lori? No, it's 9 years ago.
Long
so
time.
Guess what? 9 years ago, we didn't know we'd be dealing with 4,200. So we thought that if it was a compilation, we'd always say unaudited see notice to reader, but guess what? That's not the case, okay? So update your balance sheet. If you see it on your income statement, update your income statement. And if you see it at the tops of your notes pages, we have been emailing administrators for several months now, say, please send in your calibhf.cbw file, that is your headers and footers, and we will update that so you no longer see unaudited see notice to reader at the top. Now, if that's still the case in your firm, it's okay. Just send us that module. So we're looking for this one here. Let me just see if I can open up my Explorer here. Okay, I'm in my Calib, wherever that is, and you need to look for this module here, calibhf.cbw, right there. Okay, so send that as an attachment to project, project at jazzit.com. And we will turn that around as quick as we can. We've been getting a few of those last minute people, and we will send that back to you. And then when you update, you'll be fine. Okay, so just keep that in mind in terms of that. All right, let's go on.
All right.
And there it is. So there's the email, by the way. Sorry.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. This question was from Natalia. Where does the % info come from in the draft income statement by map number?
Great question. Okay, so see, I like all of these questions. The example file. I'm on the document manager. Notice this, document 1.2 and document 1.3. These are CaseWare automatic documents. They should be in every one of your client files that has a Jazzit financial statement. These two documents are in your full mast, okay? We have a video, I believe we have a video on our YouTube channel talking about the draft financial statements, but they are automatic documents, okay? So in the properties, this is a financial statement balance sheet based on draft active from prior year. And the key here is that the order is in map number, okay? Now, these are important because in my draft balance sheet, I wanna make sure that the ending year's prior retained earnings ties into my opening, okay? If it doesn't, we get into trouble with rounding, going to recalculate. And the other one though is my income statement. Now, I think I just closed out of my file completely. That's fun. All right, so the other one is the income statement, 1.2. Here we go. Now, I'm sorry, 1.3. There we are. So how did we get these numbers coming into here? And we had to think about this a little bit because by default, they actually are 0, but we wanted to have this % information coming into our draft income statement. So here's how we did it. And this comes in as part of when you copy your mapping into your client file. Click on engagement, go to mapping. Okay, so there's your chart of map numbers, and click on report. This is where the layout is for your draft financial statements. Now, we created a map number, 300.C. So I just went Control F, 300.C. I'm going to go down to that map number. I see it right here. Okay, that's a calculated map number. It's included in your mapping structure for the percent. This is the denominator in that percent column. Okay, so you see here, the behavior is C. Calculated means you can't attach it to a map number or an account. So it's not a map we normally would assign to. We can't. And in the plus here, this is under my calculation column. I had to turn that on. It basically is just adding up all the maps that start with 3, the revenues. So if you wanted to, you could even edit. If you wanted to exclude or add something else in here, just put in a comma and then put in the map. This star means anything. So any map number starting with 311 would be included. So once we had the denominator, the only other thing we needed to do was at the very beginning of this page, so on our first amount coming on the statement, in the percent column, here's your calculated map. So there's the denominator. So that's how we get the percent column showing up in the draft income statement by map number.
Alrighty, and Dylan asked, sometimes my property, plant, and equipment working paper doesn't seem to roll forward properly. Why is this, and what can I do to fix it?
Okay. I won't say it's a good question, but it is. All right, let me come out of here. Now, when we do a year-end close in CaseWare, under engagement, year-end close, make sure, first of all, that this is checked off, okay? Update case view roll forward cells. Now, fortunately, once you do a roll forward with that selected, the next time you roll forward, it's already selected. This moves Jazzit documents forward. This moves the year numbers in the current year, like manual numbers in the current year in a statement to the prior year, cleans out the current year. This option takes the ending numbers in your property, plant, equipment, makes it the opening numbers next year, clears out the additions and disposals. This option in your marketable securities takes the ending number of each security, makes it the opening balance, and clears out the transactions, okay? So we need to make sure that that option is selected when you do a year-end close. Now, if you do a year-end close and you didn't have that option selected, if you catch it right away, start over, okay? So we're saying get rid of that file you just created when you rolled it forward, and do this again and check this option off, and it will roll everything forward. If you've already done a bunch of work, which is typically the case, and you go, uh-oh, I didn't roll this thing forward properly, well, you can't do this again from the prior year. You can't go back to the prior year and then check this option off and roll it to a file that exists. It will not touch those case view documents, okay? Now, what can you do? Well, what you can do is roll forward, but in the file name, make it a temporary file. So call it temp. It will roll all your Jazzit documents forward properly into temp, and then you can copy from temp to year 2 using copy components, okay? So in other words, you've rolled your property, plant, equipment forward properly in temp. You use copy components to copy property, plant, equipment from temp into year 2, overwriting the property, plant, equipment that wasn't rolled forward properly, okay? Now, the other thing, and if that sounds hard, it is, just make sure this is checked off, and you won't have to do that ever, okay? So the other thing to keep in mind, now this does happen occasionally, we've seen this happen, where somebody has a CaseWare file and there's a CVW, a case view working paper document that's corrupted. It may not even be on the document manager, but it's in the file folder, okay? When you roll your CaseWare file forward, and I'm not gonna do it here because it takes a while, you get a dialog box saying rolling forward, and it tells you which document is being rolled forward. Now, what can happen is if there's a corrupt case view working paper, it will stop on that document. So you kind of have to be quick, but you will actually see which document is causing the problem. And what it does is every document after that doesn't roll them forward. It stops on that document, but it looks like it's done the year-end close because it puts you in next year's file. But guess what? Everything past that corrupt document did not roll forward. So what you need to do is you know, make a backup, but delete that document, roll forward again, and make sure it goes all the way through, including your property, plant, and equipment, and now you've rolled forward properly, okay? Doesn't happen very often, but I want to mention it because I've seen it more than once. So it does happen occasionally. All right, next page. Oh, it's survey time. We're doing a poll.
Time for our poll. Yep, have you completed a CSRS 4200 engagement? So I'm just going to launch this poll. Curious to see how many people have jumped in already.
Yeah.
We'll leave this open for a little while. I know based on the number of calls that we've had, I think that a lot of people are, if they haven't completed one, they're in the midst of completing one.
Yep.
All righty. Just going to close the poll here.
Okay.
And I'll share the results.
Great.
So that's about 2/3 of the people have already completed an engagement.
66% of you have, and 34% of you have not. About 80% of you voted. Thank you very much for that. Okay, Lori, I'll get you to close the poll, and let's keep on going here. Okay, so a couple of other questions that have come up, and these questions I think are coming up because
Mike, I think you skipped past one.
Did I?
I think you have to go back. Yep.
Oh,
right there.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Thank you for that.
No
See
problem.
how keen I am? Okay, I wanted to get to those other questions. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Terry asks, why should you not turn on rounding until you are completely finished the file?
Okay, so here's the reason why. I'm going to go into my example file and I'm going to open up the financial statements. Actually, I guess I had them open. Now, usually what we say is leave your rounding turned off until you've completed all your adjustments and you're within a few bucks and you turn it on. The reason is when you engage the rounding, it's like taking a photo at a point in time. So whatever the differences are, and typically with cash flow, we round to accounts payable. So let's just say we had only just started the file and we go, you know, I'm going to turn on that rounding to make sure I don't forget to turn on the rounding. Be the first thing I do. Haha. Well, when I start the file, I may have a lot of work to do before I get to being only a few bucks out. Let's say we're out $10,000 in our cash flow. When I turn the rounding on, it's going to add or subtract $10,000 to the balance from accounts payable, whatever's in the trial balance. So we get the call, somebody says, why have I got 45,000 in my accounts payable when there's only 35,000 in the trial balance? Well, because you turned your rounding on, okay? So if we leave the rounding, so when that happens, you get this big number, or if you were even within a buck and you turned your rounding on, but then you went back to CaseWare and you did more journal entries, when you come back into your statement, your rounding is going to be on recalculate, okay? And recalculate means you turned it on, but we don't seem to be in balance here, okay? So the only way to fix that is to actually turn the rounding off. So we turn it into the disable position. And what that does is release whatever those rounding differences were. And now accounts payable in the cash flow says 35,000 because that's what the trial balance says, okay? So when we turn it on again, we get to enable. So whatever the difference is, $1 or $2, that will be added to our 35,000, okay? So that's why we take it off, because rounding does not recalculate itself. It calculates at the point you turn it on or the point you turn it off, okay? Now, recalculate is a whole topic on itself. We have a video on our YouTube channel devoted to that, okay? So if you go to our channel and you search recalculate, we're going to look at the channel in a moment. We actually have a video on all the ways we have seen recalculate happen. But the number one reason is prior year's retained earnings not tying into the opening balance in the current year, okay? And that's your draft balance sheet by map number that we're taking a look at there. So just leave it off. When you're done, turn it on and say, this is the final touch to the file, okay?
All righty. And we do have a video on our YouTube channel about that. Mike, I think, did you mention that or?
I did.
Okay. Okay, so next question that we had was, why does a balance come in backwards? So typically you see that as with brackets on the financial statements.
Something like accounts payable, or even a related party balance or a shareholder balance coming in backwards. What happened here, okay? So here's what happened, probably. Somebody goes under engagement, they go to import accounting software, they go to Sage 50 Canadian edition. I want you to see two options down here. These are two very evil options. The first one is skip the Giphy data. And this is by default. These are not selected, okay? You want to skip the Giphy data. You don't want the client's Giphy coding on your trial balance to be exported to the tax program. You want your mapping, which will put the correct Giphy code on to the trial balance, to be controlling the Giphy code. So we want to check off skip Giphy data. Now we use a little funky reverse logic on the next one. It says update the sign field on import. You do not want this option selected, okay? This is the debit and credit that's going in the sign column on your trial balance. If you select that, and I believe by default they're actually, that one is selected, unselect that option before you do your import, because you're gonna get these reverse balances happening here. Now, let me drill a little deeper on that. So I'm going into my working trial balance. I have clicked on the map number heading and I'm sorting myself by map number. Okay, this is helpful because this is how we're going to be grouping accounts on the financial statements. Notice that all the map numbers that start with 1 have the debit sign, okay? Even something like accrued amortization. It is a credit, but it starts with a 1, so its normal sign is a debit, okay? So that's how it's going to be treated properly in the statements. Also, your Giphy export is going to be correct. Everything will be fine on this, okay? So if I scroll down a little, you notice that, so all our assets, 1, debit. All our map numbers that start with 2 are a credit. Now, keep in mind that even if one of the accounts in a group of map, let's say we've got 10 accounts payable accounts, one of them goes debit, the rest are credit, that's going to throw the whole balance off, even if that one is a 0 balance. So we got to be really careful here, okay? So all the 2s are liabilities and equity. They all are credit. We come down into the 3 map numbers, those are revenue. They're all credit, okay? The 4 map numbers, starting with a 4, are cost of goods sold. They're all debit. We get down into the 5s, those are expenses. They're all debit, okay? And we get down into the 8s, that's other income, unusual items. Those normal sign are debit, okay? So just keep that in mind when you're looking at the sign. It's a good idea to actually have the sign column displayed. If you don't see it, right click here and go to show and turn on your sign column. You can also reorganize your columns by right clicking on a column heading. I like having my map number, my Giphy code, and my sign fairly close to each other in the working trial balance. Now, what if we've got a few that are off? So let me go up here and I'm just going to change one. So let's make our cash a credit just for fun. Okay, let's say it was an overdraft. So you say, well, maybe it should be a credit. What does that do to our financial statement? So if we look at the statement here, we go up into the balance sheet, notice that, maybe I picked a bad example here. You know what I'm going to do is actually I'll pick the one that usually happens. Let's pick accounts payable. Let's go down here. I want to just see if I can mess this up, Lori. Accounts payable. So let's make that a debit. All right. Go back to our statement. Did I screw this up? Yes. Oh, no. I must be on the wrong, I think I've got the wrong file here. I don't have the working trial balance associated with this. I got so much open here. It will reverse it though in the statement. It'll cause it to go the other way. I may even have to recalculate. Probably have to come out. But I want to make sure that these are all credits. Now I could go one by one and find these, but it would take me a while to do that. So what I'm going to do instead is click on Tools, go into Options, and get into autofill under mapping. What I want is just to make sure that my sign field is correct. So what I'm doing is I'm going to choose the property that I need to fix. It is sign. So what it's doing is it's saying, okay, if it has a map number that starts with a 2, it should be a credit. And in our mapping structure, you'd see that the sign is credit. So I'm going to just do an autofill, and it's only affecting the sign field. I'm not going to choose if it's blank because I'm going to have a debit and I want a credit. I'm not going to choose a range of map numbers. I'm just going to leave these all blank. Click on autofill now. Yes. So what it's synchronizing is what's in the mapping to what's in the working trial balance. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that. Yes, and then I'll close this. So if I go down, you see now, see how that's been flipped back over to being a credit balance because it started with a 2. All right, trust me, there it is, credit. Okay, now I get to come here, but you see my numbering is kind of goofy, right? Because I'm on, see, that's how it's a legitimate mistake, Lori. I added these in at the last minute, and of course, if you do something last minute, it always bites you.
That's what happens. Yep.
That's what happens. Okay, so
right.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do I update my engagement letter for CSRS 4200?
Okay, so in your working trial balance, in the document manager, so I'm on the example file here, I have my engagement letter right here. Now I've turned on my case view identifiers. I find that very useful. If you would like to do that in yours, just right click on where it says name and just go show and turn on, you'll see it at the bottom, case view identifier. I already have it on. So the new engagement letter, the identifier is JZEL. So if I right click on this engagement letter, go to properties. If you see EL in identifier, change it to JZEL, okay? Now you need to have your engagement letter closed, can't be open. It'll be grayed out. See how mine's grayed out? It's because it's open. So if you see EL, change it to JZEL, then open your letter and update from Resource Center, okay? As long as your administrator has been doing the updates, this will now move you into the new engagement letter. I would also recommend you just say no on keeping your data. If you are moving from the EL to the JZEL, that will move you into the new engagement letter, okay? You know you're on the new letter because you now have the appendix at the back, as long as you're on the 4200 standard. If you're a notice to reader, you're not going to see that, obviously, okay? The other document is your management letter. Now, I think that's the other question here, Lori.
Yeah, now can I mention one thing, Mike, actually?
Yeah.
The other way to do it, Mike kind of did a shortcut there by changing the identifier from EL to JZEL, and we're going to do the same thing for the representation letter. However, you can also just delete the engagement letter from the document manager, use copy components, and copy in the new JZEL, because it should be in your GenMast. If you've been doing your updates and completing them in their entirety, you should have those letters already in GenMast for the use copy components to put into your files.
Thank you for that, Lori. That's a good point. Right, I had an idea there, but it fell out. So if you had the old engagement letter, you'd have to delete it. And in administrators, in your resource center and in your master file, you can delete EL and RL. We're never going back to those. Just make sure you have JZEL and JZRL there, okay? So the same goes for management rep letter. Now, you may not have this in here if you were just doing compilations. This letter was optional under 9200. You may or may not have been doing it, but under 4200, you are going to be doing this. So either bring in the JZRL, or if you have, if I right click on this, if it's RL in the identifier, again, I have it open, so I can't edit this. If you have RL there, just change it to JZRL, open the document, and update it from Resource Center. And that will pull the new rep letter in, which is for 4200. Now, what I'd like to do is just show you a print preview of this letter. Okay, so this letter is slightly different from the one that's in your PACT if you have Jazzit PACT. This letter in fundamentals is based on the same methodology as the management letter for review and audit, in that it has the client's letterhead at the top. It's a letter coming from them to us, which means we modified the wording slightly in the CPA sample for 4200 so that it was a letter coming from them to us, okay? So instead of saying management, we say we, right? Because it's coming from them to us. The letter that's in the PACT is exactly the same as the CPA example. So it will have your letterhead at the top, and it will be a letter you're sending to your client. Okay, so I think either one is fine because we've been using this letter basically for review and audit forever. So whichever one you prefer is fine. Just make sure you're not using the old one, okay, the RL. That was discontinued, I believe, in 2017, Lori?
Yep.
Might have even been prior to that. So
No,
RL and
2017.
EL, they're gone. They're gone. Okay. Let's go back. Now I've done those questions.
You have?
Keep on going. Okay. So there's some other topics just to wrap up today. First of all, new content on our YouTube channel and playlists. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/myjazzit. If you can't remember that, just remember that at jazzit.com, there's a button that goes right to our YouTube channel, okay? So at the very top, you can just click right there, takes you on our channel, okay? So here's our channel. There's a couple things to know about it. One is that if you just click on home, you will see, actually, I guess on videos, here's our latest videos. So I've been posting videos in here fairly regularly. I do tweet that. I do put it up on LinkedIn when we post a video. So if you're in that, you'll get a notice. But for example, grouping items in the statements and combining schedules on one page is a video I just posted up 2 weeks ago. We also have playlists on here. So if you click on playlists, there's two I want to bring to your attention. At the very bottom, if you're new to Jazzit, here's an introduction to Jazzit. If I click on view the full playlist, you see all the videos that are just helping you with tips and things to get started with Jazzit. The other playlist that I want to bring to your attention is installing and updating. So if you're an administrator, then there's a video here talking about updating fundamentals or checklist packages, etc. So those are useful too. Now I'm going to put myself back on the main our YouTube channel. Notice there's a search box at the top. That's to search YouTube, but there's a search here. That's just to search our channel. So if you click on this one just to the right of about, and you type in 4200, hit enter, you'll get our videos on 4200. We have 2 videos. So there's a video here for what to update. So I'm the administrator. What do I need to do? There's another video below that, adopting 4200. So I'm a preparer or manager or reviewer. I want to make sure that we've done what we need to do. A lot of things we actually talked about today, but there are a couple of short videos, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, not too bad, talking about 4200. So if you haven't, please subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified, all that stuff. We actually are getting a few subscribers, Lori. Look at that. We're at 320. That's exciting because we were at 290. We're going to be over 1 million in a million years from now. But it's good. We are trying to put videos up. And if there's a particular topic we haven't done in here that you'd like to see, let us know. David does videos as well. I try to do an ad hoc video once in a while when we have time to do that. But, we try to answer questions that are coming in frequently. We'll do a technical bulletin, and then if we got time, we'll do a video or one or the other. Nobody reads anything anymore, though, so I think we just go to video nowadays. It seems like it. Okay, so that's it for today. Just a reminder that if you'd like to see a particular topic covered in a future Java, let us know. You can send that to java@jazzit.com. Lori and I get that, so please feel free to do that. Also, if you like today's format, let us know. We're going to try different things. So we thought we would try answering your questions for the entire session today. Hopefully you've picked up a few things that were helpful. And I'll turn it over to you, Lori.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Just a reminder that we're going to send you an email in the next week or so after we've posted the recording of today's session to our website. It'll include a link to download a certificate for PD purposes. Make sure you use Google Chrome as your browser, or the certificate may not load properly. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. I know it's the end of the month, and it's a special month with getting all those slips filed. So thank you again for joining us, and a special thanks to those who submitted questions for us to cover today. We look forward to seeing you at our next Java. We don't have it scheduled yet, but keep checking the website for updates. And of course, we always email everybody when there's one scheduled to go ahead so you can register. But thanks again, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Take care.